You know what time it is. Time for another train wreck. Welcome to Not Another Baptist Podcast, a podcast exploring church revitalization, church planting, and other Southern Baptist goodies for your ear holes. I'm Matt Hensley, the pastor of Mayhill Baptist, and I just celebrated eating my 2,000th waffle in a row. And I'm loving the mountains, I'm loving the cooler air, and I am glad to be joined by Kyle Bierman. Who are you?
Well, I am Kyle Bierman, the pastor of First Baptist Church in Alamogordo, and the desert still hot, still feels like a dumpster fire down here. According to you, I mean, so everybody down here in the desert, we're like, man, things have cooled off. Like we did a thing in a park last night. It was only 98 degrees, and we were rejoicing that it was only 98 degrees last night.
Y'all are nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's just because you've gotten soft up there in the mountains and used to the cool air. But we're both pastoring fantastic churches in southern New Mexico and bringing this podcast to you so that you know what not to do as you learn from our mistakes.
Your mistakes. I'm perfect. Remember this. But yes, this podcast is sponsored by the Christian Standard Bible. So you could say, as we often say, that we are the official podcast of the Word of God. We love the CSB because of its blend of readability and accuracy, and encourage you to check it out at csbible.com after the show. Nice pause there.
Yeah, I was looking at today because you did that. Okay, so we're switching. All right, I got it. Today we are talking about pastoring and parenting. So we're going to take a lighthearted look at the struggle that we might face when we're preaching our hearts out and look up to see one of our children's doing something naughty. So Matt, now I know that's never happened to you, right? It's not like you've ever had one of your daughters mocking your every word. Nope. And it's not like you've ever had one of your daughters maybe even mimicking your every movement while you're preaching, right?
No, never.
Okay.
No, Kyle, that's too soon. This is too fresh on my heart. Because yes, I thought my daughter was going to meet Jesus on Sunday.
This is your youngest, right? So she's 7 years old right now?
Yeah, she's 7 years. I don't know how old she is, just something like that. But I'm sitting there preaching and I'm just rolling. We're having a great time. You know, the church is engaged in it, and I'm just rolling. My hands are flapping around like they normally do. I'm yelling a lot and all that kind of stuff. And I kept hearing an echo. And everything I was saying, I would hear an echo, and I'm thinking at first, there's something wrong with the sound system. And I looked right in front of me, and there is Gracie in all of her cute glory, mimicking my every movement and mocking my every single word. And so I said, like mid sermon, mid sermon, I'm in the middle. We're talking special revelation this past Sunday on Psalm chapter 19, the second half of that text, and I'm just in the middle of it. I'm trying to do this so that nobody even notices, and I'm just rolling through it. And I'm like, Gracie, stop, or you're going to go to my office. And the next words that I hear are stop, or you're going to go to the office.
Oh my goodness.
And I about lose it. I about climb over the pulpit, and I give her the look. Every dad has that look. The look. We had it growing up.
That's right.
Your parents had it. My parents had it. Every parent has it. I gave her the look, and I just pointed. And like her eyes got really, because she was just playing. She wasn't trying to be disrespectful. And she was doing, unfortunately, she was doing what I taught her to do. We mimic people all the time.
That's right.
We'll be standing there as people are talking and playing around, and I'll be, mimicking their every single move. And so she was only doing what her daddy taught her. But in the moment, I about sent her to Jesus right then and there. And so she wasn't quite sure if I was serious. And so I said, no, go to the office. And I looked with a look that could have killed her right on the spot. And she walked back to the office and then just picked up right where I was and just kept rolling. And yeah, it was awesome. And I actually had a lot of compliments after the service from folks that said, think that could have been handled much worse. In another one of those ways that it could have been worse was just ignoring it and not following through and all of that. So it was a great opportunity to really set the example for my church of, lovingly but firm and calm.
Yeah.
Just handling the situation and dealing with all of that stuff later. And she finished writing 100 sentences that said, I will listen and pay attention during church. And a few of my friends said they're going to give that assignment to church members or to deacons.
Hey,
and so
that's a good idea.
Whatever works. Whatever works, man.
And so, listen, in full disclosure, like I knew a little bit of that story, because I'd seen you post it on Facebook. That's the first time I'd heard that she repeated "you're going to go to my office." And so, listen, if you're listening to this, like my reaction was totally genuine. Like that was not set up at all. I had no idea that one was coming.
Oh man,
that's one of the best stories I've heard, man. And so,
but we've got some more.
So yes, we do. Share. Now, my question is like. Did any of you did your church members lose it like while you're doing this, or like did they have the parental wisdom to know now's not the time to laugh because it's going to encourage this behavior if I do?
The best way to describe their reaction would be it was all visible. Like I think they knew the parental wisdom not to lose it audibly. But I could see in their faces, some of them almost biting their tongues and just like, oh man, like this is interesting. Like this is great. And some of them I don't think knew exactly what was going on. Some we actually had a full section. So there were people all the way down to the back of the sanctuary. So some would not have even remotely been able to hear what had actually happened. They just see me, say something, hey, you're going to go to the office. And the next thing they know, I'm pointing. So for all they know, she's just picking their nose. They don't have any idea what truly happened. So there was some just genuine, like, apparently something was bad enough to warrant her heading out, but no real clue what actually took place.
And to be clear, this was on a Sunday night. So not like a packed Sunday morning, so maybe by God's grace, like this was not a packed Sunday morning, because at that point that would have been a whole new dynamic, man.
I'm just grateful for God's restraining grace in that moment. Because
I think you did well. Yeah.
I did well.
All right. So as you said,
I appreciate the encouragement there.
Yes. Hey, good job. So as you said, we have some stories from some other pastors and PKers who submitted stories in a Facebook group that we're in. So we're not gonna give any names, but we picked out a few of our favorite stories that we saw. That pastors get to deal with, because we don't stop being parents on Sunday mornings, right? Now our wives might disagree with that to an extent. that sometimes they act as single parents on Sunday mornings, but we interact with our kids as well as, we're not just their pastor, but we're also their parent, even on Sunday morning. So we pulled out some great stories. And so Matt, I think you're going to start with one if I remember right.
And this is one that I could totally see my kids doing. And just before we get started, one of the things we want to do on this episode is really talk about the balance of parenting and pastoring, though we don't claim to be experts in either one by any stretch of the imagination. But here's one that I could totally hear or see my kids doing. And it says this: my dad has been my pastor all my life. On Sunday nights, he would move a small podium up halfway down the aisle and teach from there, since there weren't many people. We've always stayed in with that teaching because we were the only kids in a small church. He was teaching and had a bad habit, being the young preacher he was, saying a lot. Maybe this was Kyle somehow. And he said a lot during his sermons. Well, that particular night, I started counting the ums because I was bored and a kid. As I was counting them, it suddenly, for some reason, it struck me as funny, and I let out a chuckle. My mom gave a quick glance at me, and I think we can all picture what that glance was, and it shut me down. Then I couldn't control it anymore, and I started to laugh. That made my mom start to chuckle, and before you know it, we were both laughing somewhat under our breath and getting glares from Dad. Funniest part was Mom had no idea why I started laughing. She just couldn't help laugh because I was laughing, And let's just say Dad was not as thrilled.
Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, Matt, here's one maybe you can relate to, or the old Matt could relate to. So this one says, when I was 10, I got scolded from the pulpit. I was a fat kid. My friend I always sat with at church was not. It was cold in the sanctuary that fall morning, as all sanctuaries should be. So we did what kids do, pulled our arms inside our shirts to warm up. After I'd warmed up a bit, I decided to push my arms back through my sleeves to wear my shirt normally again. I ended up being a bit too fat and my shirt a bit too small to accomplish the task, so my arms were stuck halfway out my sleeves, and I looked like a baby chicken with my little arm wings waving around and me scrounging to get my arms out. Now, keep in mind, Dad's preaching, so my dad saw this from the pulpit with his son acting goofy, so he stopped the sermon and said, "Son, come spend the rest of this message on the front row." I stood up quickly and ripped the back of my shirt, forcing my arms through quickly as I headed to the front. You know what that makes me think of? All right, I'm about to bust out a 90s movie reference here.
I bet I know what it's going to be.
That guy in a little coat.
Yes.
That guy in a little coat.
Oh, man, this one is hilarious. It says, while he was preaching, a child started throwing a huge fit. The mother was trying to take him out of the room, but he was grabbing every pew on the way out that he could, and she would have to pry his hands loose of each and every one. She finally was able to pick him up and carry him out of the room. As the door was closing, he yelled out, "Y'all pray for me! Y'all pray for me!" And the entire church lost it at that point.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I've heard that story a couple of times in a couple of different scenarios. I feel like that's something that's happened multiple times. Kids being carried out. Pray for me. All right, one more, and then I'll share a personal story. So one more, and this is great. This guy says, Sunday night about a year ago, my middle daughter fell asleep and was out like a light. After the service, my wife tried to wake her, and she wasn't stirring. We might have some deacons that could rival that. And so, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
Careful.
He said we had everyone go out to the foyer, and I woke her up and told her that it was Monday morning, and everyone had been looking for her all night long. That's clever and cruel. Like, I'm impressed and offended all at the same time that you would do that to your precious daughter.
That's like one of those rapture jokes you could pray on a dispensationalist or something, man. you could really mess with somebody.
That's great.
Kyle, I need you to spill the beans. I shared mine.
Okay.
To kind of reveal that maybe my kids are evil and demonic. Yep. Not really. My kids are great. That was one of the first times that I've ever had to get onto them during a service. But I shared that story of Gracie. Tell us some stories about your kiddos.
Yeah, so I've got one. And as I was sharing with you, like I tend to kind of get in the zone when I'm preaching, and I purposefully don't spend a whole lot of time looking at my family.
You're a terrible father.
Because I'm afraid, like, I'm gonna, and a lot of times, like, we have children's church during our sermons, during the sermon here. So a lot of times my kids are out during the sermon part. But even like Michelle, like, I'm scared to look at her for fear like she's gonna give me like a look and I'm gonna start laughing or something like that. So I just don't like, and she might be trying to mess with me the whole time. I don't know, because I can't look at her because it makes me nervous that I'm gonna start laughing. So anyway, this was at a previous church up in Clayton, New Mexico, and that church is split level. So you go like up the main stairs to the sanctuary, and then the fellowship hall is in the basement directly below the sanctuary. One Sunday, Haley was, I don't know, 4 or 5 or something like that maybe, and Michelle was downstairs helping some of the ladies get a potluck together, and Haley was down there helping her. And so they were down there, and this is really sweet because Haley had like a quarter or something she wanted to put in the offering. And she said to Michelle, "Hey, I brought this and I want to put it in the offering plate." And Michelle said, "Well, I'm sorry, we're down here, but if you wait, we'll do it at the end of the service." So Michelle gets busy working on something at the potluck, turns around, and Haley's gone. And what had happened is Haley climbed up the stairs to the to the sanctuary and came in the door, and she comes up right as I'm praying, so I'd read the passage, or I think I'd read like my opening scripture, and I was praying, and she comes up and like stands right beside me on the stage. And so, I mean, I get done praying, and I'd noticed that she was there, and so I just tell the congregation, excuse me for just a second, muted my microphone, and I just knelt down and I was like, sweetheart, what are you doing? And she just goes, I wanted to put this in the offering. And she handed me her offering, and I said, oh, okay, thank you. And all I'm thinking is, mom's gonna lose it, right? Because she has no idea where Haley is. So like as Haley turns and goes out, and Michelle meets her as she's coming down the stairs, and Michelle said she just goes, what did you do? Haley goes, I took my offering to Dad.
She was just trying to worship, Mom. Come on, man.
That's right. And so, yeah, so, so Michelle took her, and again, I think you handled it really well. Said, okay, next time, let's just wait. Okay. We don't interrupt Dad while he's preaching. But same thing, like I got some some conversations with folks in the church afterwards, and they said, I handled that really well. And it was really a sweet moment for them where, I mean, I had a lot of things going through my mind, like, why are you here? What's going on? And in the end, it was just my daughter. So, and she didn't realize, I don't think what she was doing, that she was interrupting a message or whatever. She was just bringing me her offering. She wanted to put it in the offering plate. So pretty sweet story.
Well done. I'll give you some encouragement on that one as well. Well done. But kidding aside, it happens. And if it hasn't happened to you as a dad, especially if you've got some little ones, I hate to tell you, but it's coming.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a great opportunity for you to model calm, firm, yet loving discipline right in front of your folks. It's a great, if you will, an illustration. Even if you're not preaching on parenting, it's a great opportunity to really model that for your folks. But it also brings up a great reminder that we're pastors. And, Kyle, of course, tries not to be a dad or a husband as he preaches, but the rest of us that actually love our families aim to be husbands and fathers first. And so I don't know why I'm even asking you this, but what are some ways that you emphasize the balance of being a husband, being a father first and foremost, and then a pastor with your calling in the church, in the home and in ministry? What are some ways you emphasize that?
Yeah, believe it or not, my wife and I were talking about this last night. We did a back to school bash, and she was visiting with one of the ladies in our church who had just been a teacher, whose husband is in the Air Force, and they were just kind of talking about life in general, and the way that when her husband comes home from the base, like he's done. He checks out. He's able to check out from work, and Michelle was explaining how sometimes in ministry we don't get to check out like that. I mean, work follows us home sometimes. But for me, like I'm pretty diligent to guard my Fridays, which are my day off, as a family day. And sometimes, a lot of times it's just us hanging around the house. But it shows my kids and Michelle that ministry is not gonna take their place in my life. So that's one of the ways that we model that I'm a husband and I'm a dad first. And I fail in that so many ways, but one of the things that I try to be consistent in as often as possible is Fridays are protected. How about you guys?
And ours is the exact same, except, we've shared here that, the girls are out of school on Mondays. Of course,
Yeah.
Your kids are out of school every day as
Really
homeschooled. But no, they're off of school on Mondays. And so while that is like the least favorite day for me to have off, it's the day that makes the most sense for me to take off. And I do the same thing, and we kind of have an unwritten rule that even on that day off, things can happen. Ministry can still, require to be taking over that day at times. And so what kind of the unwritten rule is that second call or that second text. And so I generally will not reply to the first call, the first text, the first email, that kind of thing. If it's important and they put something in the, the text that I can, actually go off, or know that this is something that really does require a little bit of attention, I can do it, because I realize that there are some things that cannot wait 24 hours. And then there are some that absolutely can wait 24 hours or even a week. And so, it's just somebody wanted to, to visit. And that's great. And there's times for that. But I want them to know that they're coming first. And so I'm going to guard that time. And so often I'll put the phone on airplane mode, and then, kind of like a good member of an office, I'll go and check it in the bathroom. If if I'm going up to go to the bathroom or whatever, I'll turn it on the way in and see if my phone blows up or something I need to deal with. But like today, we're recording this on Monday, and we got them up and got them dressed, and we drove to Roswell. It's about an hour and a half from
aliens
from us. And I kept praying, man, that an alien would abduct Gracie, because I didn't think she was ever going to finish those sentences that we had her do. But yeah, we did that. And we made it in a sense kind of ministry too, because there's a pastor there, and we met up with Aaron at first Roswell, and he met us for lunch. We ate a burger together, and he just wanted to bless my kids, so we bought them Cokes and sweets and all that kind of stuff. And so they thought this guy hung the moon.
Sugared them up right before your hour drive back home. That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron Collier.
Thank you, brother. He told me, like, he started talking about, man, you need to do this with the podcast. I was like, brother, we've already done it. You don't listen to him. And so he doesn't listen to podcasts, so he's not listening to this. But at the end of the day, our encouragement with this episode, we haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty here, but whatever you do, don't sacrifice your family on the altar of ministry. Ministry is important. Your family is importanter. I can't use that word on Lifeway Pastors, but I'll totally use it here because plug. I'm reminded, nice plug, yeah. Your legacy ain't going to be in the churches that you lead. 50 years from now, what you did at First Alamo, there's going to be things that matter in eternity because of it, but people aren't going to remember this and that you did. Same thing here with Mayhill. But 50 years from now, how I led my family, how I led my girls, all of that, that's going to be my legacy. And we need to raise our children well, lead our wives well, because after all, the Bible tells us to, it tells us to train them up. And so that's our calling. And we're going to wrap this up. We want to keep this short. We've had some kind of long ones recently, and we don't want to spend too much of your time today, but we thank you for listening. And we thank you for those of you that have subscribed. We also ask you to throw down a 5-star review so we can keep these coming, and encourage you to visit www.notanother.baptistpodcast.com or visit us on Facebook at Not Another Baptist Podcast or on Twitter at NAB_podcast. Send us out, KB.
Until next time, may your coffee be as black as night and as bold as the gospel you declare.
Until next time, may your coffee be as black as night and as bold as the gospel you declare. See, I mocked you.
That's right. There you go.
I'm going to have to go write 100 sentences. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Bye,
God bless. Thank you for listening. We'll see you soon.